Welcome to the monologue with Zibuse Kunene. It's a monologue on video, but a dialogue in the comment section. Let's get to it, right? Um, in this episode, I want us to talk about manhood. I probably haven't lived long enough to be decisive about anything. I probably haven't lived and experienced things long enough and enough in my life to definitely say certain things are this way and they are not that way. There are probably men who are much older than myself who have experienced life in very different ways. They've gone through so many hardships and they've acquired wisdom through experience. However, with all of that, I do believe that I've lived long enough and I've experienced enough to come to this conclusion that being a man is hard. Just being a man on its own is hard. Being a husband is hard. Being a father is hard. And then you take all of that, you contextualize it to the current times in which we live. And then the hardness is multiplied. And then you see how there are certain influences from different platforms, from different cultures, from different countries that further confuse the identity of the man. And then there are so many identities that just keep coming up over the years that as a man, you just don't know what it means to be a man. And what's even worse is when you get into a relationship and she says, you are not man enough. And that relationship ends and you meet somebody else and then they say, be a man. And how you show up as a man to her does not mean that you are man enough to her. And then you go and you meet another one who says, you are man enough for me. And then you sit there, you think, who am I at the end of the day? And so, firstly, it starts from there, that you have women who define manhood according to their subjective views of what a man is. Quick story. I was in a relationship with a very beautiful lady, and I was convinced that she was mine and we were going to live out our lives together. So I'd given myself into this relationship. And I remember something happened one day where I think this guy had almost bumped my car or did slightly, and my demeanor was calm. I just didn't see a need to be all huffy and try and be macho and fight and, And when we walked away from that incident, she said to me, yeah, but why are we so quiet? That's not a manly thing to do, and so on. So in her expectation, I was supposed to just act angry and be aggressive and fight and be all of that. And then that relationship ended. I met the woman who's now my wife. And thinking that that's how I needed to be as a man, to show up as a man, be aggressive, be ready to fight and do all of those things. We then experienced something and I wanted to be aggressive. And she said, calm down. This is not how you need to be. And then I realized each woman will define what a man is based on what she thinks a man should be. And so you then live today where it has been said historically that men used to be the providers. Men used to be the ones bringing home the bacon. So the definition of being a man, or the identity of a man, is tied into his ability to provide, especially financially. The identity of a husband is him bringing home the bacon and put food on the table. His identity as a man, as a father, is in how he provides financially for his children. And so you have men then living their lives just thinking, I need to financially provide, forsaking all other parts of themselves, forgetting that you are a spirit being who possesses a soul and who lives in a body. That in you there are still other aspects of you that you can still harness. You can still be a spiritual leader and provide. You can still be an emotional anchor. You can still be a teacher to your children. You can still be a support structure for your wife. You can still be so many things other than financially providing. And yet, society then has boxed us into financial providence. It does not mean, though, that financial providence is excluded. I'm simply saying there is more than financial providence. So that when that aspect of you or that aspect about you is missing, you know there are other things that you can still provide to your wife, to your spouse, to your partner, to your children, and to the overall community. But the expectations upon men are so high that society's failure hinges upon men. So let me put it for you into context. We have God who introduces himself to us as a man. And God has his kingdom in heaven. And he has created a kingdom for us on earth. And then he says he has given us dominion on earth. Let them have dominion, Genesis 1:26. He tells us he's given us dominion. So as a man, he has given us that dominion over earth. And then over and above that, we then carry the same identity as God, as a man and us being men. He then says, as God, he is also a father. And guess what? We become fathers at some point. Okay? God again says he is a husband and he's our maker. And we become husbands and makers. But if you go back and look at the definition and the etymology of father, you get to the word source. And if you look at God, God is the source. Everything comes from him. He is our source. And so as the father, as a man, as the husband, you are the source. And because you are the source, in society, whether we see progress or whether we see regression, the source is us, men. Forget about all the movements that call men all sorts of names, but just us as men taking responsibility and accountability. We are the source. If you go back into families where the men, the fathers and the husbands are missing, there is a certain level of chaos and disorder. And even when you look at the etymology of husband, it means you're the householder. Because when you are there, the woman spends all of her energy and time trying to fulfill these dual roles, where she's trying to be the father, the disciplinarian, the teacher, and she's also trying to be the nurturer. And she's frustrated and she's angry and she's hurt. And she doesn't receive that protection that would, be coming from you as the husband. You've abdicated your responsibilities to her. Some men are absent even in their presence. So they are physically there, but they're absent. And that's because you have not understood your role and your importance. It's because you've not understood what it means to be a man. It means looking at everything and still deciding to be there. It means facing the odds and still choosing to fight in spite of it all. And what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to be a husband? Look at how God has had it rough. Yes, God has had it rough. He chose Israel. He chose Abraham, and then he carried his promise through Isaac and Jacob, who becomes Israel. And out of that comes a nation. And when this nation comes, the whole idea is to have them be an example of what it's like to be chosen by God and to bring others into the kingdom of God. But so many times, the Israelites just turn away from God. And when they turn away from God, they reject Him. One of the heartbreaking stories that I read was when the Israelites go to Samuel and they say to him, "You're a judge, you have limitations, you will die. We want a king for ourselves." And Samuel is hurt by that. And then he goes to God, he says, "But do you hear what these people are saying?" God says, "Don't worry, they have not rejected you, they've rejected me." And I remember reading that and my heart broke. They've rejected God again after so many times. And so God says, "It's okay. Don't worry about it, Samuel. I'll give them a king." And so God gives them a king. And then you would think they would be appreciative of that. But no, they are not. And so as a man, you have to face up to the reality that no matter what you do, the people for whom you're doing it may not always see what you've sacrificed, the pain that you go through, the pain that you are going through, for them to be where they are. Sometimes they may not even recognize the fact that they are there because you were there. They will not understand or know the strings that you've pulled behind the scenes. And it is also not for you to shout about it and make noise and say, "This is what I do for you." It is simply for you to acknowledge that despite your best efforts, that went unappreciated. But you cannot give up. You still need to go ahead. And then we look at, I always say, to understand how you need to be as a father, you look at God. You study God in the Old Testament. And how you need to be as a husband, you look at Jesus in the New Testament. Because Jesus comes and says, "I am the groom and you are my bride," as the church. And so what Christ does is how we as husbands must do for our wives. So there you are as a husband, and there you are as a father. it all culminates into this person who is a man. And because you're a man, God chose you to be a man. The circumstances that you're facing, God knows how to carry you through those. So I feel pity for the man who does not have a relationship with God, the man who is not connected, who does not fellowship in God, with God, who simply relies on his own strength to just face through the day. Because that's when you end up selling your soul to the devil, because you were just not aligned. So as a man, it is important for you to be submitted to God. And as you are submitted to God, he then downloads what you need for your journey. And once you are in alignment, God becomes your comforter. God becomes your counselor. God becomes your Jireh. That you go out there not knowing how to provide, but God makes a plan for you because you trust in him. If you want to know what it's like as well being a man, look at what David went through. The temptations, the Psalms, what he wrote there, and how real he was. So how do you live your life as a man outside of God? You cannot. Because it will all just feel so heavy on you. It will come down on you, and you won't understand what's going on. And that's why we find so many men end up unaliving themselves, ending it all, because they just don't see any hope. But in God we live, we move, we breathe, we have our being in him. He's the fuel. When you keep doing and doing, and all you ever want to know is, will I ever have that breakthrough? Will I be happy? Will this mountain that is before me be moved? Will I ever have enough faith to move things around? And think about this as well. God says he is a father to the fatherless. He is a husband to the widows. He never says anything to the man. Even if as a man you have a father and your father dies, God becomes your father. But God has always been your father. But what happens when your wife dies? God does not become a wife for you, but he does allow you to remarry. So God still has given us a way for us as men to keep going, because he has said it in his book in Genesis 1, or was it 2, 2:18, if I'm not mistaken, that it is not good for a man to be alone. And we know that he has referred to the male because he was looking at Adam. And after saying that, he created Eve for Adam. So as a man, God does not want you to be alone. However, the Apostle Paul also says it is good for a man not to touch a woman. However, when you don't have self-control, then you must marry. So there you are as a man. What do you do? What do you do when you are at your wit's end? It's simple, my friend. Just go back to God. I know that as a man, when you think logically, when you think, okay, this needs to make sense, trusting God does not usually make sense, because it means you'll be like Abraham, who God told him, I want you to leave your father's house and go to a place where I will show you. It's like, where am I going? And God says, I will show you. So no, but I can't live here. And God says, to a place where I will show you. And when you trust God, then you see how he comes through for I've seen God come through for me. I've seen God make a way when I didn't know how. And I know that He can. And I know that the weight you carry, it's not in vain. Look at what Jesus endured. Even the death on the cross. Shameful, painful, horrible, embarrassing, tragic. But He did it for His bride. You can do it too. God still chose Israel, despite Israel rejecting Him. Your children may reject you, but you still are a father. You are still the source. You are still the husband. You are still the household. And that will never change. So as a man, chin up and look up. That's where your help will come from. God, get on your knees, my friend, and pray. Find other men whose relationship is rooted in God and hold on to them. Walk with them. Be with them. It's a monologue on video, but it's a dialogue on the comment section. So subscribe, like this video, and then comment. Let's engage in the comment section.